parental guidance is advised.
We're working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. We're coming to you live from Manila and Vietnam. Hello, Charlene.
Hello, Alma. Hello, I'm Charlene Navaja, bringing you the news in the dynamic Asean region.
On today's headlines, the Philippines today accused Chinese Coast Guard vessels of firing water cannon at boats delivering supplies to Filipino Marines in the disputed South China Sea and ordered Beijing to back off.
Local vaccination drives may now use the COVID-19 vaccine of Novavax Incorporated after it was finally granted an emergency use authorization by the Food and Drug Administration on Wednesday.
Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship, Joey Concepcion, has reminded business establishments to uphold minimum public health standards to further control the spread of COVID-19.
And blurring the line between fantasy and reality, computer-generated influencers are hugely popular with teenagers and will yield increasing soft power as interest in the metaverse grows.
First in our news, the Philippines today accused Chinese Coast Guard vessels of firing water cannon at boats delivering supplies to Filipino Marines in the disputed South China Sea and ordered Beijing to back off. Foreign Secretary Teodoro Locsin said he had expressed outrage, condemnation, and protest to Beijing over the incident, which he said happened on Tuesday as the Philippine boats were traveling to Second Thomas Shoal in the contested Spratly Islands. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but our boats had to abort their resupply mission, according to Locsin in a statement on Twitter, describing the three Chinese vessels' actions as illegal. Locsin described the Philippine boats as public, suggesting they were civilian vessels, and said they were covered by a mutual defense pact with the United States. China has no law enforcement rights in and around these areas, he added. They must take heed and back off. Tensions over the resource-rich seas spiked this year after hundreds of Chinese vessels were detected at Whitsun Reef, which is also in the Spratly Archipelago. China claims almost all of the sea, through which trillions of dollars in trade passes annually, with competing claims from Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnam. The contested waters also have valuable fishing grounds and are believed to sit atop vast oil and gas deposits.
Malacanang said today that the Duterte administration will continue to defend the Philippine sovereignty and territory. As we have in the past, we will continue to assert our sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction over our territory, said acting presidential spokesperson and cabinet secretary Carlo Nograles in a press statement. Nograles' statement came after the Western Command reported that three Chinese Coast Guard vessels blocked and water cannoned two Philippine supply boats on a resupply mission to military personnel on board BRP Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal in the West Philippine Sea. No one was hurt, but the Philippine vessels had to abort their resupply mission. Nograles lauded the Department of Foreign Affairs for its swift action on the Ayungin Shoal incident.
Meanwhile, the Philippine Navy and the Royal Thai Navy, or RTN, have vowed to forge stronger ties and deepen cooperation. Now this, as Thailand's naval attaché to the Philippines, Captain Pakpum Munwen Sri, paid an introductory call to Philippine Navy Chief Vice Admiral Adelius Bordado at the Philippine Navy headquarters in Manila on Wednesday. The furtherance of collaboration and forging stronger ties between the Philippine Navy and the Royal Thai Navy were among the highlights of the conversation between Navy Chief Bordado and Captain Muen Sri, according to Philippine Navy spokesperson Commander Benjo Negranza. In a statement on Wednesday night, Muen Sri began his duties and responsibilities as Thailand's naval attaché to the country last October 1st. The Philippines and Thailand are both member states of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. Other ASEAN member states include Brunei, Darussalam, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Singapore, and Vietnam.
Cambodia has released 27 activists jailed over charges of incitement against strongman Hun Sen's government as the country prepares to host international talks. Among those released in the past 12 days were members of environment group Mother Nature Cambodia, as well as outspoken union leader Rong Chun, said Sam Ak, the deputy director of rights group Likad Ho, on Wednesday. He said courts reduced their sentences or granted them bail, but the charges against the individuals had not been completely dropped. Cambodia is due to host an online summit of Asian and European leaders next week. It also faces growing calls to improve its human rights record as it prepares to take the helm of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations in 2022. Sam Ak attributed the prisoners' release to government sensitivities to overseas criticism. Brad Adams, Asia Director for Human Rights Watch, praised the development and urged European leaders to continue to pressure the Cambodian government to unconditionally free all remaining political prisoners. The rights group said at least 60 political prisoners remain in custody. Prime Minister Hun Sen is one of the world's longest-serving leaders and has been in power for 36 years. Critics say he has won back democratic freedoms and used the courts to stifle opposition and activists.
President Joko Widodo, or Jokowi, has ordered the expedited realization of the state and regional budgets, APBN and APBD, in order to provide economic stimulus to the public. This month is November 2021, and we will soon enter December 2021. Expedite the realization of APBN and APBD. When it comes to APBN, ministries, non-ministerial government institutions must stay focused on expediting its realization, the president said at a cabinet plenary at the presidential office in Jakarta on Wednesday. He further asked Home Affairs Minister Tito Carnavian to monitor the realization of APBD. The Home Affairs Minister must convince regional heads that the realization of APBD is crucial to boost economic activities, particularly in the regions concerned, according to Widodo. Citing an example, he said the realization of social protection funds has only reached 77% of the budget execution list, or DIPA. The budget realization under the labor-intensive program has only reached 77%, while the realization of assistance to support MSMEs and corporations has only touched 60%. The government has set the economic growth target for 2021 at 3.7 to 4.7% or 4.5% year-on-year despite the pandemic. Economic growth slowed to 3.51% year-on-year in the third quarter of this year compared to 7.07% year-on-year in the previous quarter due to the enforcement of public activity restrictions.
Back to the Philippines, where Cabinet Secretary and acting presidential spokesperson Carlo Nograles yesterday confirmed that attorney Daryl Ritchie Valles The lawyer who visited two detained executives of Pharmaceutical Corporation no longer works for Malacanang. We have recently come across reports that say a lawyer allegedly from the office of the Special Assistant to the President visited the Dargani siblings while under Senate detention, Nograles said. Nograles said that in the interest of providing the public and media with information, the government has made an effort to validate and confirm the dates of the lawyer's employment in Malacanang. Based on the records of Human Resources Management Office of the lawyer was formerly under the office of the president and resigned on March 1st this year. Further inquiries revealed that upon leaving the office of the president, Attorney Valles thereafter worked in an office under the House of Representatives.
COVID-19 news now, and a massive boost for access to life-saving coronavirus medicines for low and middle-income countries. The welcome development comes after UN Global Health Agency UNITAID said on Tuesday that it had helped reach a voluntary licensing agreement for a Pfizer antiviral treatment, meaning that the drug can now be produced generically worldwide. The medicine, which is taken orally, is designed to be administered with another antiviral HIV drug, the ritonavir. Take a look.
Today, the medicine patent pool MPP, which was created by Health Agency UNITAID to increase access to medicine for low and middle-income countries, is announcing a voluntary license agreement for Pfizer COVID-19 oral antiviral treatment candidate, which is administered in combination with a low dose of ritonavir. Under the term of the head licenses agreement between Pfizer and MPP, selected generic medicine manufacturers worldwide that are granted the sub-licenses will be able to supply the drugs to 95 countries, covering up to approximately 53% of the world population. Yes, first, that's a medicine who's mostly, will be mostly available for people who are especially at risk. Then that's not a medicine that everybody will take. That's very probably, let's see the direction in the few weeks or months of the position of the different bodies. But initially, we are thinking that that medicine probably will be used only for more people at risk. And the objective is basically to avoid for people to go to the hospital or to have severe case, meaning that you need to take the medicine in the coming few days, the three days after you have the first symptoms.
Under the terms of the UNITAID-led deal, manufacturers will be able to supply both drugs to 95 countries, covering more than 50% of the world's population. Now, this includes all low and lower middle-income countries and upper middle-income countries in sub-Saharan Africa, as well as those wealthier nations elsewhere that have transitioned to wealthier status in the past 5 years. UNITAID said that Pfizer will not receive royalties on sales in low-income countries and will also waive royalties on sales in all countries covered by the agreement while COVID-19 remains an international public health emergency. Pfizer also said interim data from ongoing trials demonstrated an 89% reduction in the risk of COVID-related hospitalization or death compared to a placebo in non-hospitalized high-risk adults with COVID-19 within 3 days of symptom onset. Similar results were seen within 5 days of symptom onset.
Pharmaceutical giant Novavax has applied for authorization for their coronavirus vaccine in the European Union with a decision possible within weeks, Europe's drugs regulator said on Wednesday. The jab, if approved, would be the fifth authorized for use within the European Union. The other four are made by Pfizer, BioNTech, AstraZeneca or Oxford, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. The assessment of the vaccine, which goes under the brand name Nuvaxovid, would be carried out under an accelerated timeline, the European Medicines Agency said. working differently to other vaccines. The vaccine contains tiny particles made from a version of a protein found on the surface of the coronavirus spike protein made in a laboratory. It also contains a substance to help strengthen the immune responses to the vaccine. The EMA said when a person is given the vaccine, their immune system will identify the protein particles as foreign and produce natural defenses, antibodies, and T cells against them. If a vaccinated person later came into contact with the coronavirus, the immune system will recognize the spike protein on the virus and be prepared to attack it. The antibodies and immune cells can protect against COVID-19 by working together to kill the virus, prevent its entry to the body cell, and destroy infected cells. The vaccination regimen calls for two 0.5 milliliter jabs given intramuscularly 21 days apart, Novavax said in a statement. Nuvaxovid is stored between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, enabling the use of existing vaccine supply and cold chain channels. Novavax, a company based in the U.S. state of Maryland, says its vaccine has 90% efficacy against COVID-19 based on a North American study. Hard hit by the pandemic, Indonesia became the first country to approve the Novavax vaccine in the beginning of November, the company said. And on Wednesday, Novavax said it also received approval from the Philippines to use the vaccine under the brand name Covovax.
Back here in the country, local vaccination drives may now use the COVID-19 vaccine of Novavax after it was finally granted an emergency use authorization, or EUA, by the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, on Wednesday. FDA Director General Eric Domingo announced they issued the EUA after Novavax passed their screening process. It is approved for the active immunization of individuals 18 years and above for the prevention of COVID-19, Domingo said in a televised interview with a government-run PTV. He also noted the Novavax vaccine will be given in 2 doses, at least 3 weeks to 4 weeks apart. Citing the results of the clinical trial of the vaccine brand, he said Novavax causes mild adverse events and it has an efficacy rate of 89.7%. He also said we could probably start using this vaccine towards the end of the year or by 2022.
The Philippine government has rolled out its booster vaccination for the healthcare workers on Wednesday, with a target to cover the country's more than 1 million medical frontliners before the year ends. Health Secretary Francisco Duque III, vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr., and other health officials led the ceremonial inoculation at the National Kidney and Transplant Institute, where some 250 healthcare workers are expected to get their boosters within the day. That's what's there.
Usually, after 6 months, bumababa yung antibody protection level. Ngayon, itong ating booster dose, binibigay natin para maitaas uli at patuloy ang proteksyon taglay nitong bakuna.
Kung magbigay ang directive ang ating DOH na pwede natin pagsabayin ang healthcare workers at saka yung ating immunocompromised at yung ating mga senior citizens na authorized ng FDA, kaya po natin i-deploy. Kayang-kaya po natin. Meron po tayong enough na supply.
Duque said the FDA's initial advice was to be mindful when mixing and matching booster doses, especially if the primary jabs have a different platform from the third shot. Nevertheless, he said this is still allowed since the objective remains the same, to increase the recipient's level of antibodies against SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. Several of the NKTI healthcare workers who received their boosters on Wednesday had Sinovac as their primary jabs and Pfizer as the booster.
Meanwhile, the Department of National Defense or DND Secretary Delfin Lorenzana on Wednesday night confirmed that he tested positive again for COVID-19. He said, "Hello everyone, yes, I am COVID-19 positive this morning and I got the result of my swab test yesterday, meaning Tuesday afternoon, after the Senate hearing. I am asymptomatic," he said in a message when asked to confirm reports that he is positive again for the sickness. This is the second time for this year that Lorenzana tested positive for COVID-19. Last April, he went on quarantine to avoid infecting others in the DND after being positive for the disease. In 2020, the DND chief tested negative for COVID-19 in March and April after coming into close contact with people infected with the virus. Lorenzana added that he is fully vaccinated. He said he will observe himself for several days and then have another swab test. Lorenzana has just returned home from making official trips in Europe to Spain and Poland last week.
The Senate was forced to suspend until Monday, that's November 22, its budget deliberations as senators and legislative staff must undergo 5 days of quarantine and get RT-PCR tests after Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana, who stayed several hours within the session hall on Tuesday, tested positive for COVID-19. At the same time, the Business Mirror reports that Senate President Vicente Soto III asked the Interagency Task Force and the Department of Health to review the quarantine protocols for those coming from other countries and enforce them regardless of the stature of the traveler. Soto sounded disappointed because the forced quarantine on all those exposed to Lorenzana during the budget hearings of the Department of National Defense last Tuesday derails the already tight timeline of the Senate in processing the 2022 budget bill, which it earlier hoped to pass on second and third reading late next week. This so that bicameral conference meetings can be quickly held with the House of Representatives to allow for the 2022 General Appropriations Bill to be ratified by both chambers before their Christmas break and for the President to review and sign it into law before year-end. That way, the country avoids going under a reenacted 2021 budget in January. Soto noted that Lorenzana, who came from Poland, a non-green country, should have been at home in self-quarantine since he sat for hours on Tuesday with several senators. Notably, the defense budget sponsor, Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa and Senator Francis Tolentino, all those in the hall must undergo 5 days of self-isolation and then tested for COVID-19.
And the news continues here on ASEAN in Focus. Charlene and I will be back right after this.
Mahilig talaga sa drama ang mga Pinoy. Bakit parang di gumagalaw yung leading man mo?
Dali, dili matumba. Tulog na siya. Tulog na.
Paano naman kung switch roles?
Bakit gabi na kayo umuwi, mama at papa?
Kami pinto.
Iyayok mo.
Ano barangay dito baliw ka?
Sa kabila ng pagpikit ng iyong mga mata, ginagawa mo ang lahat mapigilan lamang ang iyong pagtawa.
Good thing! At i-announce natin ang winner ng Game of the Day! Funniest Nakaball Videos! Okay ba yung direct? Cut direct. Ako rin, Direktor!
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot-kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Turning now to the UN's battle against tobacco use, the World Health Organization, or WHO, signaled signs of a pivotal downward shift in the number of users globally. Citing new data, the WHO welcomed the news that there are 200 million fewer tobacco users today compared to 2015, and that means that 1.3 billion people now use tobacco in all its forms, a number that is expected to drop to 1.27 billion by 2025. Let's listen in.
Have a number of questions. Let's start.
Today, we are releasing the WHO Global Report on Trends in Prevalence of Tobacco Use, which shows that 150 countries are seeing tobacco use rates in decline. 60 of them are declining fast enough to likely meet the ambitious target of a 30% relative reduction in tobacco use by 2025. Just 2 years ago, in the previous report, only 32 countries were on track for these targets. The number of countries has thus almost doubled. Countries are at all income levels are making progress and getting on track to meet the targets. The evidence is clear. Tobacco control works. Currently, around 1.3 billion people in the world are tobacco users, and that figure is from 2020. The number has already reduced 25 million since 2015, or roughly 5 million tobacco users fewer each year in the past 5 years, and is expected to reduce another 28 million by 2025. We can keep this momentum going by closing the remaining gaps in tobacco control. But there is also some huge concern that we need to raise today. While it ought to be impossible for minors to obtain and use tobacco products, globally 38 million children aged 13 to 15 years of age report using tobacco of some kind. 25 million boys and 13 million girls. This is not including e-cigarettes, which we know are already exceeding tobacco in popularity in some countries. The tobacco industry continues to make well-researched, calculated, and unscrupulous attempts to redesign and rebrand its products to sustain profitability and target young people with a new portfolio of products to hook the next generation of users. All countries have a moral obligation, and many also a legal one, to protect children from being hooked early as future customers for life. To help tobacco users to quit, WHO developed the global investment case for tobacco cessation that we are releasing today as well, which shows that by investing an additional $1.68 per capita each year in evidence-based cessation interventions, such as brief advice, national toll-free quit lines, qualified nicotine replacement therapies, and SMS-based cessation support, we could help 152 million tobacco users successfully quit by 2030, saving millions of lives and contributing to countries' long-term economic growth.
For WHO Southeast Asian region, the trend is this. The region currently has the highest rates of tobacco use with around 432 million users or 29% of its population. But this is also the region where tobacco use is declining fastest. The region is likely to reach tobacco use rates similar to the European region and the Western Pacific region by 2025.
Australia returned about 500,000 doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine to Singapore today as part of a sharing arrangement agreed on in August. Under the agreement, Singapore sent around 500,000 doses of the mRNA vaccine to Australia on September 2 to help accelerate Australia's vaccination rollout. The returned doses from Australia will support Singapore's ongoing program to administer COVID-19 booster vaccinations to eligible segments of our population, said Singapore's Ministry of Foreign Affairs in a press statement. This dose-sharing arrangement is testament to the strong relations between Singapore and Australia, underpinned by our comprehensive strategic partnership. When the deal was announced on August 31, Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said the same quantity of vaccines would be returned in December.
Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion has reminded business establishments to uphold minimum public health standards to further control the spread of coronavirus disease, despite the easing of alert level systems in some parts of the country, including Metro Manila. Business establishments like restaurants, spas, and salons should ensure high compliance by allowing only fully vaccinated persons in their indoor spaces. Let us not lose the trust that the government has given us. We all want to move NCR to alert level 1 in December, Concepcion said in a statement on Wednesday. Mr. Concepcion, who is also the Go Negosyo founder, made the statement as the positivity rate last November 12 rose to 5.5%, which is higher than the World Health Organization recommended positivity level of 5%. He added that although the slight uptick is expected due to more mobility of people, complacency will be the country's enemy as it moves toward overcoming the pandemic.
The presidential bid of former Senator Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. has hit yet another snag, with another petition seeking his disqualification from the 2022 poll. According to a Business Mirror report on Wednesday, a group of petitioners, which includes former Bayan Muna Party List Representative Saturnino Sator Ocampo and Gabriela Women's Party List Liza Masa, filed the petition before the Commission on Elections. Their 59-page petition cited the threat of Marcos's candidacy on the reparations for the victims of the dictatorship of his later father, former President Ferdinand Marcos Sr. They also cited their younger Marcos's conviction for violating the National Internal Revenue Code, which has a penalty of perpetual disqualification from public and office participation in any election. The group also cited Marcos' claim in the certificate of candidacy he filed before the COMELEC last month, where he claimed he was not convicted of any crime with a sanction of perpetual disqualification from holding public office. Marcos is currently running for president under the Partido Federal ng Pilipinas. Marcos is currently facing two other petitions before COMELEC for cancellation or denial due course of his COC, also for the same grounds cited by the latest petition against him. The first of the two earlier filed petitions is set to undergo pre-conference meeting before the COMELEC 2nd Division next week.
In other news, there were 6,901 new COVID cases and 55 more fatalities recorded during the previous 24 hours, according to the Thai Public Health Ministry announcing it on Thursday morning. The number of new cases rose from 6,524 announced on Wednesday, when the country recorded 56 more deaths. On Wednesday, 7,556 COVID patients were discharged from hospitals after recovering from the coronavirus. Since April 1, when the third wave of COVID-19 began, Thailand has treated 2,015,262 COVID-19 patients, 1,905,773 of whom have recovered to date. Since the pandemic started early last year, there have been 2,044,125 COVID cases with 1,933,199 complete recoveries so far. The death toll stood at 20,160 during the third wave and 20,254 since the beginning of the pandemic.
Singapore is gradually easing COVID-19 safety measures and making sure the situation stabilizes with each step of easing. Here's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong speaking to Bloomberg Editor-in-Chief John Micklethwaite as at the close of the first day of the Bloomberg New Economy Forum. Let's take a look.
We are trying to reach the end point without paying the high price which many other societies have paid, which got infected before they got vaccinated. We kept COVID very low in Singapore until we had everybody vaccinated. We had hoped that after nearly everybody got vaccinated, then you have herd immunity, and theoretically, life goes back to normal. But with the Delta variant, you may have everybody vaccinated and you still have quite a lot of people getting infected. Because of our strategy, we have not had the very big outbreaks and that the British or many of the European countries or the Americans have had. And I'm now at a point where I've had most of the population vaccinated, but most of the population is COVID naive. And it turns out that's not enough. And we are having COVID spread in our population. Every day, today there are about 3,000 cases. Yeah. Probably times 3, you count those which you didn't see. And over a period of months, those numbers will build up. And if you've been vaccinated and then infected after that mildly, I think your chances of being sick again are much less. And COVID will, I hope, spread much less virulently, and we can progressively ease up. What I'm trying to do is to ease up a little bit, make sure things stabilize, ease up a bit more, make sure things stabilize again, and ease up a little bit more, and eventually you probably will not be back to status quo ante, but close enough, and without having had to make unsettling U-turns. If I have Freedom Day, and after 3 weeks, cases flare up, and I have to tighten up, it's very upsetting to the population. It's confusing, they will be frustrated, disappointed, and you may well pay a price along the way, human price. So I think it's better we take it step by step.
And Asean in Focus, we'll be right back.
Tara! Ating pasyalan ang isa sa mga lalawigan dito sa ating bansa at ating alamin ang kanilang malalim na kasaysayan, saganang likas na yaman at napakakulay na kultura, ang Quezon Province. Dito lang yan sa Tara! Ating pasyalan. Let's go!
Welcome back. No more and out with the gamblers and harsh neon lights. In with the female fighters and fancy lasers. After a 20-month coronavirus break, Thai Kickboxing's home is embarking on a new revolution. Take a look.
Ladies and gentlemen, next match is to make ในที่สุดเนี่ยภาพการเชียร์มวยมันจะไม่เป็นแบบที่เราคุ้นเคยอาจจะยกป้ายแสงหรืออาจจะเชียร์ผ่านคอมพิวเตอร์หรืออาจจะดูผ่านระบบต่างๆภาพนั้นเนี่ยมันจะมาแต่ในยุคของผมเนี่ยมันเป็นเหมือนยุคเปลี่ยนผ่านแล้วก็ทำลายกำแพงถ้าผมพูดภาษาผมคือทำลายกำแพงมวยต้องอยู่คู่กับผนังซึ่งไม่จริง
Blurring the line between fantasy and reality, computer-generated influencers are hugely popular with teenagers and will yield increasing soft power as the interest in the metaverse grows. Typified by new influencers like non-binary Bangkok Naughty Boo, these characters promise to stay forever young, on trend and scandal-free. Let's take a look.
มีมากกว่า
Hi, I'm Bangkok. Nice to meet you all. I'm 17 forever. Non-binary with a dream of becoming a pop star.
มีคนฟังอยู่ดีใช่ไหม
So Bangkok Naughty Boo is a mixture of Bangkok teenagers that I have collected in my own project, I Want a Bangkok. So I've selected some interesting styles from Bangkok teenagers, and then I mix them together to become Bangkok Naughty Boo.
ใช่ต้องใช้เวลาด้วยเนาะใช้เวลาใช้อะไรว่าไปนี่แหละก็พยายาม
คือพอเป็นแบบ AI หรืออะไรเงี้ยมันแบบมันมีหลายหัวคิดถูกปะแล้วเขาก็วางแผนมาแล้วว่ามันแบบมันภาพลักษณ์หรืออะไรมันถูกวางแผนมาแล้วว่าโอเคเป็นอย่างนี้ทาร์เก็ตเป็นแบบนี้มันเข้าถึงวิเคราะห์มาแล้วอะไรเงี้ยแล้วว่าเนี่ยคือข้อได้เปรียบมากกว่า
I hope I can meet you all in person one day. Love you.
There you go. Thank you so much, Shirley, for keeping me company today here on ASEAN in Focus. Keep safe always.
Likewise, Alma. And that's the latest news in the ASEAN region. Thank you for joining us today here in ASEAN in Focus. This is Charlene Navaja from your Vietnam Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
And we'll see you back tomorrow, same time, same place, here on ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.
Napapansin ba ninyo, lumiliwanag ang mundo pag magkasama tayo? Life is so much sweeter.